right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. So this video is going to be a little bit different. In this video, I wanted to kind of look at what my buddy Tyrannotsaurus put together on Instagram. A lot of people in the industry are talking about this right now. So Tyrannotsaurus is a guy, he's a graphic designer slash artist in the bodybuilding space. And he put together basically a presentation, kind of like a slideshow on Instagram, of how he thinks bodybuilding shows could be improved from a visual standpoint. In this first slide, so what I'm going to do is go through it slide by slide and kind of give my thoughts. But this first slide, he shows Terrence Ruffin side by side, current presentation of what it could be. So he shows kind of the distracting background of the Arnold Classic where the statue was lit up behind him versus just a plain backdrop. How much better and how much more of a focal point the athlete would be if there was no distracting background. I think this is a very good point, especially after the Olympia this year. The Olympia background this year was one of the most busy, distracting, bright, and chaotic backgrounds I had seen in a very long time. And I think overall, it took away from the athlete. And this is kind of the point that Tyrannotsaurus makes, but I want to give kind of both sides here. So he says, are you presenting athletes or presenting sponsors on stage during routines? How much more presentable could our sport be by treating it like art? So on one hand, he's right. On one hand, if there was nothing in the backdrop and it was just a plain backdrop, it would make the athlete look better. That would be the ideal scenario. But we got to face the reality here. We're not living in an ideal scenario. For there to be live streams, especially free live streams, there's some cost that needs to be covered. The production team, the hosting of the stream on a website, the venue itself, the cameras, the lighting, the stage, all these things cost money. So sponsors are a necessity. And when a sponsor is giving money to a show, a lot of them want to be a part of the stream because the fact of the matter is there's going to be more people watching the stream than there are there in person at the bodybuilding show by far. Some of these pro shows, they might have a couple hundred people at the show and then thousands of people watching the stream. Now, there could be some solutions for this. They could play commercials during the stream for the sponsors. I think that would be probably the best alternative, is to cut to maybe a commercial break instead of having the sponsor on the background like you can see in this next slide where you're looking at Big Ramy. You can see Trifecta. They were a sponsor of the Olympia, and you can see all the way down the screen. So starting with Trifecta and going down, I think that's Yamamoto back there. Like all the way, the entire height of the athlete, there's sponsors all over the stage. Now, I do think this is very distracting. And like I said before, not even just the sponsors, but there's all this production value that they put into the Olympia, all this crazy techno lights in the background, trying to make it look like this big production, like a big, just all these lights going crazy, and it's just really unnecessary. So on one hand, like I said, I can understand why there are sponsors and why sponsors are part of the stage, because that's the most viewed part of the live stream. And it would make sense that if you're giving money to a live stream, you would want to be on screen as much as possible. And the best way to do that would be really just to have you behind the athletes, because then you're on screen the whole time. So it's a problem that maybe there is some kind of solution for, and I think commercial breaks would probably be the best solution. But anyway, so the next slide says, does improving the sport mean making flashier stages with excess information? Why not focus on the main product during routines? Why not warmer lights? And then again, he shows kind of a before and after of Ramy with the busy background and then Ramy with a plain background. And then, you know, no crazy lights. So part of that is having, you know, part of what I think is part of the issue with lighting in bodybuilding is some of the stuff that you see at these bigger shows, like an LED screen behind the athlete or bright lights behind the athlete and on the athlete. Because what happens then is a lot of times with cameras, if you have a light source behind the subject, your camera is gonna try to focus on the light source behind and kind of wash out the physique in front of it. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to have a bright source of light behind the thing that you want to be looking at. You want light shining on the thing that you want to be looking at. So it's really kind of a complicated, well, it's really not that complicated. It makes total sense to have a plain black background and just have light shining on the physique that you're looking at. But it's really, you know, it's kind of an interesting dilemma because it's really not that simple in the era of live streams. Like I said, I think the best solution is probably to just have commercial breaks. But I guess it's really up to the sponsors what they're happy with. So again, side by side. And let me know in the comment section below as we're going through this, Which do you prefer? Do you prefer A or do you prefer B? And what are your solutions to some of these problems? So the next slide, he's got a picture of Chris Bumstead here, current presentation versus what it could be. Why not channel funds and efforts into rewarding severely underpaid categories? The aesthetic appeal divisions have a more mainstream target audience. So this is a very good point. Classic physique, I think, is almost criminally underpaid. 90% less money is paid to classic physique than men's open bodybuilding. It is criminally underpaid. Some of the women's divisions get paid more than classic physique winners get paid, which is insane to me because classic physique, I think, arguably is the second biggest attraction at the Olympia. I think more people are watching to see men's open bodybuilding in classic physique than any of the other categories. And that's not to hate on the other categories, but if you're going to pay based on who is bringing the most attention and most eyeballs to that show, I think most of you guys would agree, and most bodybuilding fans would agree, that classic physique is a bigger visual draw to the live stream and to the show than women's physique, women's fitness, women's figure, women's bikini, men's physique. But still, these categories get paid more. So this is a good point. I do think classic physique is underpaid. And to go back to his previous point, why spend all this money on all this crazy stage production, having this elaborate, LED lights everywhere, these crazy screens, these crazy sculptures all over the stage? Why not channel some of that money into the prize money? Because really, it's not adding much to the viewing experience of the live stream. It's really not making it any better. It's just making everything very busy. At the end of the day, people are watching the stream to see the physiques, and regardless of what the background to the stream is, people are tuning in for the physiques regardless. So it really doesn't matter. And I think a lot of people would prefer a plain black backdrop. Now, I've seen the argument made that this is the biggest show in bodybuilding, the Olympia. It's like the Super Bowl. So it needs to have an elaborate presentation. And the athletes want it to feel like it's different than any other show. They want there to be a crazy stage production. They want it to be like an arena feel. They want it to feel like it's different. And I get that too. So maybe there can be some kind of compromise made. I mean, I feel like it could be in, just the same size venue, the same size stage, the same size crowd, the same lighting, and just take away all the background stuff, and it would still feel massive. It would still feel different because the Olympia is still the biggest venue in bodybuilding wherever it's held. And I think this year in Vegas, they got an even bigger venue, but it's always going to have the biggest crowd. It's always going to have the biggest audience. So it's always going to have the biggest crowd reaction. So there's that to consider as well. Now, the next slide. Now, upcoming shows feel the need to focus more on the commercial stage than the athletes to establish themselves. The cycle of commercializing bodybuilding the wrong way must be stopped. And they show the background of that KO Pro show that recently happened. Then they compare it to what it could look like with just a plain black background. So this is another thing where I can see both sides. Again, I definitely prefer the plain black background. And again, in an ideal world, that would be every bodybuilding show. But understanding the other side of the coin, we do live in the era of social media. So when a new show pops up like the KO Pro, they want you to look at pictures and look at videos from that show and know that it was from that show. And one of the ways they're doing that is a unique backdrop. One of the ways they're doing that is having their logo all over the backdrop. And while, like I said, ideally it would be plain, I can certainly understand why they're doing it the way that they're doing it. It is kind of it's an interesting dilemma. So I can see both sides, but in the era of social media with pictures and videos, I think some of these newer shows, they want to be recognized. They want people to come back. They want people to remember their show. They want it to stick out in people's minds. So it's an interesting dilemma. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about this slide. Now here's another one. I thought this one was kind of cool. Current presentation versus what it could be, showing some of the promotional material for the Olympia. Mr. Olympia's online official open showdown hype poster before this year's competition compared to the UFC title fight showdown poster. Now, I think this is a little bit of apples and oranges here because I really don't think the Olympia did a bad job of making promo posters. And honestly, I think they're kind of similar to the UFC promo posters. And in the past, they've had some really cool promo posters. This year, I think it's a little bit of an unfair comparison because, like I said, with the apples and oranges thing, they're taking like a full-sized UFC poster compared to a kind of a whittled down Instagram formatted. I mean, this was clearly a poster formatted for Instagram by the Olympia. So it's kind of a tough comparison to make, but they say, if anything, incorporate commercial aspects of established sports in areas like pre and post show online digital promotions. That's where the extra funds and glam can actually be of use. Now that part I agree with. Instead of all this money on stage and lights and production and disco dance, strobing lights all over the place, put that money into graphic designers, put that money into show promotion leading up into the show. I agree with that 100%. I would rather see better promotional material than see a crazy busy stage. I think that's a very good point. Now the next slide. The product and the athlete. Treated as an accessory to the stage. Emphasis is split between the athlete and the extra stage info in the background during routines. Treat the athlete like an artwork. Full attention solely on him during presentation. Here are a few points from my latest elaborate YouTube video on the same topic, how to treat your athlete, not based on personality and ethics, but based on presentation. Now, one thing that I think is important to point out here is that they do this at almost every show for the prejudging portion of the show. I think it's important to keep in mind that a lot of what we see with these busy backgrounds, especially with the Olympia and the Arnold Classic, we're watching the finals. We're watching the pose down. We're watching the posing routines. We're watching the parts with music. But it's important to point out that during prejudging, typically, it's a plain background on stage. Typically, there's not a whole lot of busy lights. There's not any of that stuff. Prejudging typically is focused solely on looking at the athlete. So I do think there's kind of a split. I think the night show is focused a little bit more on entertainment value. They've got the lights, they've got the screens, they've got the music, and it's kind of a show. It's a performance. And prejudging is really where they focus on the athlete. So this part I kind of disagree with because I think the athlete does get a little bit of that at prejudging. And then the night show, the finals, is meant to be not just, hey, look at the athlete, look at my body. The finals is more supposed to be, look at my performance. So that's kind of my perspective on that one. So here's, I guess, let's see. So this is pointers on the stage. So let's see. Remove excess funds, flashy over-the-top stage, multiple stages for one show. I agree with that. Add more funds to high-quality live streams, classic physique prize money, pre- and post-show promotion. I do think it would be really cool to do a post-Olympia press conference and not just a pre-Olympia press conference. Just take pointers from the UFC. Some of their most viewed videos, some of their most viewed promotional material is right after the fight. I stick around after all the UFC fights that I watch. I hang around and wait to see the post-fight press conference because that's the interesting thing. It's like, how do you feel after you just got knocked out? Here are a few points from my latest elaborate YouTube video on the same topic. Pay-per-view and stage settings plus fund allocation. Free space. I think I'm going to have to watch his YouTube video on this to get an actual idea of what he means, to actually visualize what he's talking about with the stage here. But I agree with his allocation of the funds here. I think that's a good idea. Current focus, giving sponsors excessive limelight, real-time experience, offline event promotions, where it should be presenting the sport like art, focusing on the athlete, simplifying things for the viewers. Here are a few points from my latest elaborate YouTube video on the same topic, analyzing current admin focus, basic of what a fan's perspective feels like and wishes could be better. I think this is true. There is an excessive limelight given to the sponsors. I mean, you see it all over, not only on the stage, but on the social media of all these shows. It's constantly posting advertisements. But on the other hand, like I said, there are significant costs associated with putting on these shows. So the money has to come from somewhere. And this might not necessarily be something that the promoters want to do. This might be something that the sponsors are demanding. I mean, they could say, hey, we're going to give you X amount of money to promote this show, but we want this much airtime. We want to be on the stage. We want to be on the screen. We want to be all over your social media. And if you do that, then we'll give you this money. If you don't, then we won't. So it could be a scenario where promoters don't have much choice, and this could be what the sponsors this is what they want for their money. And it just kind of puts them in a tough situation because, like I said, there are real costs to producing a live stream, to producing a show like the Olympia. Even if you say take away a lot of this major stage production value, which I think is significant and could go towards the prize money, I think, you know, the cost of renting out some of these casinos, like the Orleans casino, this is a big deal. This is expensive. This is a lot of money to promote and put on a show like this. And I don't think that should be discounted. I think that should definitely be taken into consideration. The sponsorships are needed, and then consider the fact they're paying over $1 million total in prize money on top of that. It's a lot. It's a lot to undertake. So I just think people should keep that in mind. But I do agree, the way that they allocate the funds a little bit less to the glitz and glamour of the stage, it's not really necessary. And I do agree with the bodybuilding is art hashtag he's got there as well. Okay, sorry, I was just reading that post. So it looks like he's got a link in his bio to his video, What Bodybuilding Production is Missing. So I highly encourage you guys to check that out. His YouTube channel is Toros Art and NFTs. What bodybuilding production is missing? How to treat an athlete. So yeah, guys. So that's about it. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. It's an interesting discussion that he started here, and you can see in the thread, you know, he's got a lot of people responding. Sergio Oliva Jr. is in there. Terrence Rough and Rough Diesel. Phil Heath is in there. Been talking about a black background forever on the This Is Bodybuilding page. This issue is grabbing the attention of sponsors outside the norm who have larger marketing budgets. You cannot always rely on the same type of small cap companies. Therefore, the committee needs to create strategic partnerships with athletes who can sell those corporations. I brought this up many times and hope there will be movement. Billy Garnon, he's a prominent MC. Wesley Vissers, Stage Time Photo, who took a lot of these photos in this post. Samson Dowda. So a lot of IFBB pros reacting to this post and really agreeing with this post. So I'm curious to see, and if there's any IFBB pros watching this, what do you guys think in the comment section below? Do you want all this elaborate stage production, or would you rather have that money allocated towards just simply prize money? But again, I think the problem that they're going to run into over and over and over again is there is production cost. There are sponsors that need to be made happy. I mean, it's just the fact of the matter. And keep in mind, the guy that owns the Olympia now, Jake Wood, just bought the Olympia for who knows how many millions of dollars. So he's still in the hole for buying the property. He's got to make his money back still before he can even make any money on top of his investment. So it's, you know, there's a lot of factors to consider here, and I think the big one is how to keep the sponsors happy, because I think that's a big reason for the distracting background on stage. And like I said, if you were the sponsor, you know, put yourself in the sponsor's shoes. You're going to want to be, you want to be visible as much as possible, and the best way to do that is to be visible on the stage during the stream, and you'll be visible the whole time. So I think the real, I guess my opinion is the solution to that could be commercials. But again, that's going to wrap it up for the video today, guys. I'm curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are in the comment section below, so let me know one way or another. How do you think bodybuilding could be improved? How do you think some of these goals could be achieved? Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Give it a like. It helps out a lot. Check out Tyrannosaurus's YouTube channel. Yeah, let me know. Subscribe if you haven't already. Nick Strength and Power, signing out.